Welcome to Just the Facts, episode number 13. 13. Yes, it is 13. Joining me, as always, is Mr. Bob Grill. Hey, Bob, why don't you say a couple words?
Yeah, where are we?
We are in Henderson, Nevada, right off the strip or Las Vegas, that area, which is really cool because we're in studio at Lightspeed. So finally back at it. It's been since March of 2020 since we've been on the road. Our last place that we were on the road was actually right here in studio. And now we're back. And so we're at episode number 13. So we've done 12 of these at home. So this is pretty exciting.
Very exciting.
I'm pretty giddy about this whole thing. What about you?
Well, you know what? It started here. The concept started here 3 years ago. We're finally here. Nice.
Yeah, it's super nice. And so we thought, man, this is going to be a great concept to talk about industry insights, not just Carfax, right? And be able to bring in some special guests. So we look forward to that and bringing some people here. So if you're watching this, like, I want to be a special guest, reach out to me, right? Just reach out to me, reply to this, hit a comment, whatever, wherever you're watching this. And just say, hey, I'd love to be a guest. We'll interview you. We'll put you through this really hard routine.
Pretty
right,
intense.
Bob? It's pretty
intense.
It's pretty intense routine. Not really. So we'd love to have you on if you're one of our partners out there, or you just feel like you can bring something to the tables.
They don't have to be partners. Remember, that was one of the rules.
They don't necessarily have to be. We just want your industry insights. There's a lot of stuff happening out there. And so we'd love to have some people on here. So that's a little plug. I wasn't intending on you plugging that, but come on in. We'll bring you into studio and we'll have you here. So we're so excited. I don't even, like, words can't even explain how excited I am right now.
You're a little giddy.
I'm just a little bit giddy about being here in studio on the road, and this is going to be fun. And so one of the things we thought we'd do is continue the conversation on lead generation, selling your car. That would be the customer selling their car to you, how to handle those. And so we had a great guest our last episode. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. That's with David Kane. Look us up on podbean.carfax.com, on our YouTube channel. If you're right there watching this live on YouTube, just go look at some of our previous episodes. That one was pretty cool. Maybe just do a recap summary of what we learned from David Kane.
Well, first and foremost, David's a wonderful partner of ours, right? And anytime you can include him, he just brings levity to the situation, no matter what the topic is. He's always got a smile and he's always got that positive attitude. But at the end of the day, it's the skill set he brings to the table that matters the most. And he is without question, one of the national experts on BDCs, on phone traffic. He heads up several 20 groups, and that's not by mistake. He's good at what he does, and we were excited to have him. And you know what? It's fun when you can learn some things too from your guests, right? Because we don't script them and we don't rehearse them. So when he started talking about different ways dealers are grabbing inventory out of the service department and the way they're taking their brand new cars that they're selling and keeping them in the system and encouraging the customers to come back, we call it homegrown inventory. He had a couple of different names through the 20 groups, but if you haven't seen that one, well worth your time just to listen to David Kane's amazing thing. But when we watched it back, it was entertaining, even though we were in it, right? So even when we watch it back, we pick up on some things, because you don't pick up on everything when you're in the middle of it. So I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and it's amazing to listen to him.
Yeah, and we're going to have him on Auto News, right?
Auto News, yeah.
And so their power training series, we're going to be on that in August. So be looking for that. August 10th, I believe. And so, look for that advertisement in Auto News and all over the place. So David Kane will be joining Bob and I, and we'll have that same discussion. So you won't want to miss that, because we have some new insights to share on that one. So all that being said, I mean, we keep talking about, being here and in studio and stuff, but I think that might bore our listening audience out there. It is time to get to work. And so this episode, we wanted to do sort of a follow-up to what we've been doing over the past several weeks. We talked about pricing with Dale Pollock, and then we talked about, what you just had mentioned with David Kane. And so those were just great episodes, but we'd like to do not a recap, but kind of continue the conversation on this whole idea of customers selling their car.
Yeah.
And who should handle the leads, and really start to dig in. Because I got a personal story. I don't share these a lot, but my personal story is my dad and my sister in Seattle, Washington just recently sold their cars back to a dealer. They didn't buy another car. They wanted to. They had two different reasons. One,
Did
my
they try
dad.
and sell him a car?
They did not.
Oh,
They
wow.
did not. And so two of their different, I know, which is great, right? And so, they saw the sign of a Honda store out in Arlington, Washington. This was in Marysville, Washington, right next to Arlington, where my dad lives, and saw the big old sign off the freeway. I took a picture of it. I showed it to you.
Yeah.
It says, "We'll buy your car." Right. And we've been talking about that for several weeks now, and how to handle that kind of stuff. But as part of their process, my dad needed a down payment on a house, buy a new house in Houston, Texas. They're taking off and moving there. Shout out to Houston. And so as he's doing that, he just needs to sell his car and he needs some cash, right?
Yeah.
And so had a good experience there. And then my sister, is a little bit different, for financial reasons. She just needed to get out from under her car, right? And so same thing though, is sold it to a dealer.
Yeah.
And so that one was a little bit clunky because they weren't sure, what to give and what the value was and all that kind of stuff. And we've been talking about that. So as we go into this episode, right?
I know a tool that'll help them.
I think you do. I think you do. Remember, no Carfax advertising on this one. Although we have some really good tools that will help. But on this, I guess the way I want to frame this is you're seeing a lot of it. I know, Bob, in the industry. We're talking a lot about it, but we're also hearing a lot from our dealer partners and probably those that are listening today of how to really engage in that whole trend, right? And seeing more and more people coming into the dealership to want to sell their car. In fact, I just remember it was even 6 months ago, and I was purchasing a Jeep, and I kid you not, but there were, and you and I have talked about this, there were 6 or 7 people off the street, walked in, had their car outside. Can you appraise my car? Because I want to sell it to you.
Yeah.
And the look is like deer in headlights. It's like, well, what do I do with this? Because we're just selling cars. We're not really acquiring inventory at this particular lot, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying there and just trying to frame is, what is that current market looking like? What are some best practices that we can share on Just the Facts today that will really help out that dealer that has a flood of people coming in? Right. They know they need inventory, but then how do you deal with that whole equation of when it comes to price and all that kind of stuff? So I'll quit rambling and let you take it.
It's hotter than ever, right? You asked the question, what's that market like today? It is hotter than ever. You can't watch an ad where it doesn't say we'll buy your car. Forever it was the CarMaxes and Carvanas of the world that said we'll buy your car even if you don't buy ours. Well, that slogan has gone across the industry, right? If you look at any advertisement whatsoever, whether it's online, whether you hear it on the radio, whether you see it on TV, whether you see it in the paper, there's always that tagline: "We'll buy yours if you don't buy ours. We'll buy your inventory. Let us give you an offer." All those things, right? But the reason we know it's hotter than ever is it's pretty rare when the manufacturers and the dealers are in sync, right? It doesn't happen that often unless it's a promotion or something. But we've had the manufacturers, of which we partner with all of them, give or take 1 or 2, reach out to us because we work with the dealers to such a degree, asking us to help them educate the dealers on ways to find inventory, because the manufacturers know that there's that chip shortage, there's a transportation problems, and they need their dealers to be profitable, right? They encourage the CPO, obviously, because that's manufacturer back. But at the end of the day, they need the dealer to be profitable. So they've reached out to us, right? In the last 90 days, we've done numerous occasions, been in front of dealer groups for the manufacturer on their behalf, sharing best practices, sharing tips and ideas on how to acquire inventory to stay profitable, right? At the end of the day, you need your dealers to be profitable. And that was something David Kane alluded to too, was those different type of situations. And more than ever, it's taken place. Now, what's happening besides that, we'll get into this in just a minute, I hope, is some dealers are confused by that. Some dealers are not necessarily being aggressive because they say, I don't even have cars to sell. Why would I get in there? What am I going to deliver them? A bicycle, right? So things like that, when something's brand new to you and you're not comfortable with it, you're not an expert at it, it can raise different challenges. And I hope we go down that path today, but that's certainly something we want to talk about.
Well, I think we should hit it right now.
Okay.
I think, as we look at our dealer partners out there, and you know, a lot of them still have continued success with their internet departments, with BDC, with you know, customers calling in like never before, right? Because they're spending a ton of time online. You know, even posts, you know, it's not really post COVID, but you know, we won't go there.
We're hoping
that
it
whole
is.
thing. We're hoping we're traveling again. But you know, as things start to change a little bit, you kind of see the same trends happening with more and more customers spending more and more time online researching those vehicles and calling into the dealership. But we have heard some of the comments coming back from customers. So
Yeah.
taking a consumer point of view here of, it's a really tough process. Now,
Yeah.
I gave two really kind of success stories with my dad and with my sister, but going back to what I had talked about in the latter part of my conversation there at the beginning, they didn't know what to do with the
Yeah.
customers coming in off the street. And I guess I could chalk it up to maybe they just don't have the right people handling it, or if they're calling in, maybe there should be a change of mindset there. So
Yeah.
talk to that.
Well, you know, oftentimes they have the right people, they just don't have them in the right seat, right? So traditional salespeople handling today's different style leads can be a bit confusing at best and detrimental at worst, right? Because a salesman's job is to sell cars. Well, when you're out there trying to acquire inventory, that's a different mindset because your priority changes, the goal of the conversation changes. And the worst thing you can do is take a customer who reached out to you to sell you their car and start talking about, well, what are you going to buy from us? Because now you're done. And here's the challenge today: everyone's in the same boat, same game, same whatever you want to call it. So you slip up a little bit, and there's 10 more dealers begging for that car. So it's very competitive. The supply line is limited at best, right? Um, and so you have to be on your game. And the first thing a dealer needs to do is to look at your personnel and who is taking the leads and how are we distinguishing between a inventory acquisition lead and a sales lead. Because if they're all just going into the same DMS system and you're just burning through the normal filters, of course you have lots of leads and no activity from them because they're not being handled correctly. And I know some people take that as a gut shot. Obviously, we don't mean it that way. We're not talking about any one particular dealer. But, you know, Carfax sits in a unique position in that we have a tremendous following and partnership in all three avenues of the business. So we have the manufacturers partnership that we alluded to earlier. We have 30,000 dealers that we work with on a daily basis, but we have the consumer side of it. So we're able to see from all three facets of the business where some of the pitfalls are. And that's what we're working on, right? That's what the programs are for, trying to educate dealers, educate consumers. Consumers aren't always in this position either, right? So when you look at all three avenues, there's some synchronicity there, but there's also some obstacles in the way just from traditional.
Yeah, it's crazy how some of that stuff works, right? And then I like the way that you put that. It's kind of like that triangle, right?
Yeah.
Where we have those perspectives that come into play in what we do. And so that's why we really started Just the Facts,
Right.
because we hear from all different perspectives of that. And I use that word again, but,
Yeah.
but that's the one that came to mind, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to really identify, especially in this case and what we're talking about to do to today, is that consumer.
Yeah.
Right. What is their perspective? How can you make that whole transaction a worthy one? Because really looking at it in the future, you want that person to come back at some point in time. They're probably going to want to buy a car. Right.
Yeah.
And the better experience they have, and they know this, is the better the whole situation is going to be, right, with that consumer. So let me ask you this question as we're talking about the whole idea of inventory, acquiring it, sell my car. You had talked about it with David Kane, and I think it's worth bringing up again while you and I are here in studio together. And that's something that you and I have really talked about as long as we have Just the Facts and bringing this to the table, is homegrown inventory.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the word that David Kane used, but like original or unique, or you know, the identifiable inventory there. I think this is going to be important for our listening audience to really start to grasp that this inventory is such a better, I don't want to say quality, but it's really
No, it is.
one of those things where
better
you
quality.
really need to gravitate towards this. We've
Yeah.
been talking about it a lot, but
Yeah.
now I think it is the gut shot of like, you need to do it. If you haven't really identified what your inventory is that you've owned, you personally sold to someone, you've had it serviced all the way through by that same customer, it comes back into your lot, you've got to mark that up, right? And so you've got to start to brand that. So what are some best practices when it comes to that? Because it kind of works hand in hand with these customers coming in to sell their car, because they may have already been at the dealership before prior, but now you've got that piece of inventory that really sells for a premium.
Hey, listen, first things first, don't sell it short. It is better inventory. You know, unless you're willing to say that your mechanics aren't better than anybody else, they're certified, they know that product better than anyone. Listen, everyone knows what the open recall is, but very few people know what a service bulletin is, right? And those are information and communication from the manufacturer telling the mechanics, hey, look out for this, keep an eye out for this, and maybe it never becomes a recall because they come up with a solution before it has to be. But no one knows a manufacturer's product better than a manufactured certified technician. So if you have a consumer who bought a vehicle brand new and it's always been maintained at least 80% of the time, sometimes you're on the road and you need an oil change, you go to wherever. But if 80% of the time it's been certified mechanics keeping an eye on that vehicle, there's no way it's not a better vehicle than an average vehicle, right? So the importance of that is there's also an understanding by the consumer that that's a better vehicle, right? So it's not just a sales tactic or a sales gimmick or whatever you want to call it. It is public perception that a dealership has higher quality mechanics, which is why they used to not go there, because it was also perceived to be more expensive. It was more expensive till some of the dealers started adjusting, right, with some of the normal routine maintenance, trying to keep those customers coming back. But at the end of the day, you'd be hard pressed to find a consumer who doesn't consider a dealership's service department to be better grade, whether it's perception or not, than any other given shop. So those vehicles are worth more money. They're worth more money to the dealership. They're worth more money to the consumer. Those are the vehicles that make the perfect certified pre-owned vehicle, especially lease returns and those kinds of things. But you should absolutely be the most aggressive looking in your service departments, finding that inventory, because there is no better inventory. It's the fastest selling, most profitable inventory there is. Every dealer knows that. Um, if you're going to put your eggs in one basket, that's where I would start. It takes more than that, but that's where I would put my first and my strongest emphasis.
I love that. I love that. And we've been talking about homegrown for so long.
Yeah.
And then we've keyed that phrase, right, of homegrown. And I think hopefully it'll stick, at least at Carfax and maybe even beyond. But really identifying that inventory is going to be really important. And that brings me to what we should probably end with, because we're starting to run out of our not allotted time, but we could stay here all day. But that attention span is only so much, right?
Yeah.
That's out there. Me too, me included in that whole thing. So I kind of want to end with selling cars out of the service department.
Yeah.
So this goes hand in hand with what we're talking about.
Selling or acquiring?
Or acquiring, I'm sorry, not selling cars. And like, let's sell cars out. And by the way, if you read the title of this episode and we said, we'll buy your car, that was just a title. Carfax is not going to buy your cars by any means. So actually acquiring inventory.
Yeah.
Thank you for the correction. Acquiring inventory out of the service department. So when we're talking about that, right, what about the proactive approach to maybe contacting customers that have been there, maybe putting up a board that says this is the inventory we're looking at? Maybe it's anniversary calls, follow-up calls. And I know traditionally that's always been done, but what are some, to close this out, what are some best practices from Mr. Bob Grill that's been in the automotive space for over 30 years? What kind of nugget can you give to the folks listening today that would really help them today? Like, start off with a good process in being proactive rather than waiting for the customers, because they're already doing it, calling in to say, I need to sell my car. Maybe I want to buy your car.
Yeah. Well, here's the bottom line. The bottom line is it's a better as an offensive play than it is to just be reactionary because we need some inventory. So when you sell those cars brand new, It's that moment when you should start working towards getting that customer back before you ever sold them the car in the first place, by walking them through why they should come back to your dealership for service, by walking them through what kind of value does that add to their vehicle, by walking them through the fact that should they buy that vehicle brand new from you and use your service department, it's worth more money to your dealership than any other dealer because that's an original, right? That's Bob Grove Ford's car. We know that car better than anybody. So when we go to retail that car, we can get more money for it. And when you do that from the beginning and you set up a game plan for that consumer, then you're not coming out of left field when you ask them, "Hey, DJ, you want to sell us that car back yet?" Right? Because now you've been working with them the whole time. So maybe I do go to you and say, "DJ, I know you're probably not thinking of it yet, but hey, we have a real shortage. Your car's worth more today than it's ever been before. And I know you bought it just 2 years ago, and typically it's too soon to trade it in. Guess what? Not today. Today you're not upside down, right?" But when you set that up in the beginning, you're not coming at them from an aggressive standpoint. You're not coming at them from a needy standpoint, right? You're coming at them as, this is our part of our play. Now here's the cool news: we can do it quicker than we thought we could because your car's worth more than it's ever been before, and it's worth more today than it might be in 6 months. That's the better play. Having it from the very beginning when the consumer bought the car as a plan, right? You know, the adage was in the business, there's no such thing as a used car factory, right? That was what your manager told you and yelled at you basically because your customer said, "Well, I would buy that if it was blue, or I would buy that if it had a different option on it," right? Well, there's no such thing as used car factory. Well, today there is. More than ever, you can create your own future inventory by having an offensive play, knowing when your lease returns are coming in, keeping those lease returns, knowing that customers coming in for service, going back there and talking to them on a regular basis instead of when you just want to try and sell a car, you need a car. All of a sudden, you are starting to cultivate your own best inventory because without question, homegrown inventory, sold it new, did all the service and maintenance, traded it back in, ready for sale again, is the fastest selling, most profitable inventory there is. So if you're going to step up, that's where you step up. It's your best customer with your best opportunity for the best inventory. It's a win-win-win.
That's a great way to close. I like it. So we want to thank you guys for joining us today on Just the Facts, episode number 13. We're already planning episode number 14, and we're going to keep this theme, but we're bringing in a special guest. Won't tell you who it is yet. You'll find out on some of our emails or on YouTube or Facebook of who that's going to be very, very soon. But we're excited for that. Who knows? We may be back here in studio at Lightspeed in Henderson, Nevada. There's a plug. I'll even put up my coffee cup here, Bob. Lightspeed. If you need something on the virtual side, you need some training or learning management system, Lightspeed is the ticket. There you go. There's the commercial. Again, we thank you guys for joining us on Just the Facts. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Be safe.